November 15, 2025. On a seemingly tranquil morning, a decisive and audacious military operation unfolded in the rugged, remote western highlands of Venezuela. This was not a conventional battle, but a meticulously planned strike aimed at the heart of a criminal dynasty. A convoy, the logistical lifeline and mobile treasury for the notoriously savage Sierra Verde Cartel, was on the move. This column of vehicles was more than just a transport run. It was a moving fortress of illicit wealth and raw power, hauling an astonishing 76 tons of pure methamphetamine and a staggering $220 million in untraceable cash. Protecting this immense fortune was a private army of nearly 80 heavily armed cartel enforcers. These gunmen, equipped with a formidable arsenal of Kalashnikov assault rifles, high-caliber PKM machine guns, and shoulder-fired rocket-propelled grenades, were fanatically committed to safeguarding their empire's assets. As they navigated the treacherous mountain passes, a confrontation of epic proportions was brewing. A fierce and unavoidable battle was imminent, pitting the cartel's brutal, chaotic firepower against the surgical, overwhelming precision of 300 elite United States Army Special Forces. The events of this day would not merely constitute a raid. They would mark the beginning of the end for one of the world's most dangerous drug trafficking organizations. The truth of its downfall is a story of advanced technology, strategic brilliance, and relentless force. Precisely as the clock struck 10 a.m., the profound silence of the Sierra Verde Mountains was broken not by the roar of gunfire, but by a silent whisper from the stratosphere. High above, circling in the thin, cold air, an apex predator of modern warfare, a US MQ-9 Reaper drone, maintained its unblinking watch. Its sophisticated sensors, impervious to the dense canopy below, locked onto its designated targets. On the command center's monitors, the infrared feed blossomed to life, painting a stark, undeniable thermal image of the cartel's procession. There it was, a convoy of 10 heavy-duty trucks, grinding their way along a crude dirt trail that snaked through the valley like a scar on the landscape. The sheer scale of the cargo was staggering to comprehend. 6 of the massive vehicles were laden with an estimated 76 metric tons of crystal meth, a quantity so vast it could saturate every major city in North America for months, fueling addiction and violence on an unprecedented scale. 3 additional trucks served as mobile barracks, packed with the cartel's 80-man security detail, a bristling platoon armed to the teeth and ready for war. Yet the greatest shock came from the final vehicle in the column, a truck distinguished by a crudely painted green stripe along its side. Its sealed, reinforced compartments concealed an almost unbelievable treasure: $220 million in United States currency, shrink-wrapped into dense bricks and secured within heavy steel chests. This was not merely a smuggling operation. It was the movement of a king's ransom, a moving fortress of narcotics, currency, and weaponry. For months, American intelligence agencies had been meticulously tracking the Sierra Verde Cartel, a ruthless organization responsible for pumping an estimated $4 billion worth of narcotics into the Western Hemisphere annually. A mosaic of evidence gathered from surveillance intercepts, high-resolution satellite imagery, and courageous human informants all painted the same, damning picture. This convoy was the primary artery, the vital channel feeding the cartel's heavily fortified mountain stronghold. If it were to reach its destination, the funds and supplies would bankroll another decade of terror, corruption, and bloodshed. From a clandestine temporary command post established along a remote riverbank, United States commanders observed the live feed from the Reaper drone. The time for observation was over. The decision was swift, unanimous, and absolute: interdict, seize, and dismantle. Through encrypted channels, the orders rippled outward, from the drone's operators to the special forces teams strategically positioned and concealed within the valley's terrain. The trap had been meticulously set. The convoy, oblivious to its impending doom, rolled deeper into the mountains, each rotation of its wheels bringing it a mile closer to its final, violent end. By dawn, the formidable machinery of the American military response was already in full motion. From their concealed riverbank base, located just 12 kilometers south of the cartel's mountain fortress, commanders had assembled one of the most concentrated and lethal strike packages in recent history. A force of 300 elite U.S. troops had been organized with surgical precision. core of this force was a special forces detachment of 40 seasoned operators, augmented by the overwhelming power of 2 full ranger companies, numbering more than 250 soldiers. Their mission was unambiguous: to sever the convoy's path, cutting it off from both its mountain sanctuary and any potential escape routes. Above them, a formidable air arsenal loomed, ready to be unleashed. An AH-64E Apache gunship, a flying tank renowned for its destructive power, was designated for pinpoint strikes. Its Hellfire missiles were capable of obliterating a moving vehicle in less than 3 seconds, turning armored trucks into twisted metal. Orbiting at a higher altitude, an AC-130W Spectre gunship stood by, a veritable battleship of the skies. Its arsenal, including 30mm autocannons and a host of precision-guided munitions, was prepared to rain down a torrent of destruction. And maintaining its constant vigil, the MQ-9 Reaper continued to paint targets on the ground with invisible laser markers, feeding precise coordinates to every rifle, headset, and weapon system below. The scale of the logistical preparation was equally staggering. Supply officers had distributed 40,000 rounds of small arms ammunition, 200 shoulder-fired rockets for dealing with fortified positions, and over 600 individual medical kits were staged for immediate access. Commanders had calculated that if the cartel convoy successfully reached its mountain laboratories, it could generate another $1 billion in narcotics within a mere 6 months. The airwaves in the valley crackled with encrypted radio chatter, a stream of concise orders, map grid references, and call signs. Across the hidden positions, soldiers tightened the straps on their body armor, their faces set with grim determination. Medics methodically laid out triage stations, preparing for the inevitable casualties. Every movement was deliberate, economical, and imbued with a sense of purpose, a profound calm before the violent impact. At 10 a.m. sharp, the final confirmation arrived. The convoy was just minutes away from entering the designated kill zone. With one final decisive order: execute. The trap was sprung. At 5 minutes past 10, the Sierra Verde mountainside erupted in a symphony of controlled violence. From an altitude of 12,000 feet, the AC-130W Spectre unleashed its devastating opening salvo. A blistering stream of 30mm cannon fire stitched a line across the dirt road directly in front of the lead truck. The explosive rounds tore deep craters into the earth, creating an impassable barrier and forcing the entire convoy to a screeching, grinding halt. Immense clouds of dust and debris billowed upwards, rising like monstrous smoke signals across the valley floor. From hidden positions along the ridgeline, 200 U.S. soldiers surged forward, unleashing a tidal wave of firepower. The fusillade was overwhelming. M4 carbines spat fire, belt-fed M240 machine guns roared to life, and Javelin missile launchers, already zeroed in on their targets, sent armor-piercing projectiles screaming toward the convoy. The first volley shredded 2 of the cartel's escort vehicles, the explosion spraying shrapnel and twisted metal across the rocky terrain. In the opening 5 minutes of the engagement alone, American units expended more than 6,000 rounds, a volume of fire meticulously calculated to shock, suppress, and dominate the enemy. The cartel's response, though disorganized, was ferocious. Nearly 80 gunmen dismounted from their vehicles, unleashing a desperate storm of AK-47 fire, sustained bursts from their PKM machine guns, and the sporadic whooshing launch of RPG rockets. But the disciplined U.S. formations held their ground, advancing methodically under a curtain of disciplined covering fire. The cost of this battle was real and immediate. 10 American soldiers were wounded in the initial exchange, struck by shrapnel from RPG blasts and stray rounds from the cartel's wildfire. Dedicated medical teams, braving the intense fire, moved swiftly to pull the wounded to safety, their efforts shielded by the menacing presence of the Apache helicopters circling overhead. In less than 10 minutes, the AH-64s fired more than 430mm rounds, systematically neutralizing the cartel's heavy weapons teams that posed the greatest threat to the advancing ground perimeter. By 10:20 a.m., the tide of the battle had irrevocably turned. 30 cartel fighters lay dead or incapacitated among the rocks and burning vehicles. The remaining gunmen broke formation, their morale shattered, sprinting in a panic toward the dense jungle that lined the valley. Their retreat, however, offered no sanctuary. Ranger teams pushed forward in staggered, coordinated movements, expertly cutting off escape routes with precise, lethal fire. One by one, the fleeing gunmen were cornered, subdued, zip-tied, and marched back to the convoy site under armed guard. The once invincible convoy was now a scene of utter ruin. Engines smoldered, trucks were riddled with thousands of bullet holes, and the valley was littered with abandoned rifles, spent shell casings, and the shattered crates that had once held a fortune. And yet, the mission was only half finished. Further ahead, higher up the mountain, the cartel's primary production lab, the heart of the beast, still churned out its poison. A new order came down, crisp and clear. Advance to the stronghold. At 10:30 a.m., while ranger companies worked to secure the captured convoy and process the prisoners in the valley below, a force of 100 U.S. soldiers began their arduous ascent into the Sierra Verde stronghold. Their objective was clear and critical: breach the cartel's mountain laboratories, capture its leadership, and dismantle the very heart of a billion-dollar criminal empire. The thunderous chop of Apache rotor blades echoed through the canyons above, providing intimidating overwatch and air cover for the advancing troops. Simultaneously, the Reaper drone continued its silent vigil, painting potential targets with its laser designator. As the soldiers reached the edge of the ridge, the stronghold finally came into view. It was a formidable compound, a fortress of narcotics production consisting of 8 reinforced concrete bunkers. Their smokestacks poured a foul, chemical stench into the mountain air, a telltale sign of industrial-scale methamphetamine production. Intelligence estimates had placed the weekly output of this facility at a staggering 10 tons of crystal meth, commanding a street value that exceeded $600 million per month. The assault began with an act of controlled violence. Rangers, experts in breaching operations, placed and detonated explosive charges against the compound's massive steel gates. Within seconds of the blast, intense firefights erupted in the narrow alleys between the bunkers. The compound's guard contingent, estimated to be around 40 men armed primarily with shotguns and pistols, fired wildly from windows and fortified positions. Their resistance was futile. They were no match for the disciplined training, superior weaponry, and coordinated tactics of the U.S. formations. In less than 10 minutes, the compound's defenders were systematically disarmed. 22 were arrested alive, while the rest were incapacitated in the swift, decisive action. Inside the bunkers, the scene that greeted the soldiers was one that would shock even the most hardened operators. Rows of enormous steel vats bubbled with volatile precursor chemicals. In adjacent warehouses, industrial shelves sagged under the immense weight of 1.2 million individually packaged doses of methamphetamine, all sealed and ready for shipment. Evidence teams on site estimated the value of the narcotics and additional cash found within the compound at an incredible $750 million, making it one of the largest single seizures in the history of U.S. counter-narcotics operations. The climax of the assault occurred in a dimly lit, smoke-filled office at the rear of the main bunker. There, huddled behind a large desk stacked with transaction ledgers and multiple satellite phones, was the Sierra Verde Cartel's field commander, the strategic mastermind credited with flooding 3 continents with poison. Surrounded by a squad of rangers, their weapons trained on him, he raised his hands in surrender without a single shot being fired. His capture was a victory far greater than any firefight. It severed the command and control chain of an organization that trafficked an estimated $4 billion annually. By 11:30 a.m., the entire mountain compound was under complete U.S. control. The seized trucks were logged, the mountains of cash were secured, and all suspects were zip-tied and prepared for transport to a secure holding facility. The final order from command was immediate and final: prepare demolition charges. The mountain base would not be allowed to stand another day. At high noon, the order echoed across the captured ridgeline. Demolition phase, execute. Military engineers moved with swift efficiency, rigging a network of high explosive charges throughout the Sierra Verde compound. Every laboratory, every storage room, and every reinforced bunker was carefully laced with explosives. For years, this mountain stronghold had fueled the growth of a monstrous empire. Now it would be utterly erased from existence in a matter of minutes. In a single coordinated sweep, U.S. forces had seized 76 tons of crystal meth, confiscated $220 million in cartel cash from the convoy, and captured more than 60 cartel operatives, including the organization's pivotal field commander. Military analysts quickly calculated that the destroyed stockpile and lost revenue would strip the cartel of nearly $1.5 billion in future profits. This was not just a dent in their operations, it was a catastrophic collapse. At 12:30 p.m., the valley shook with a series of powerful, controlled blasts that rolled through the mountains like man-made thunder. Each detonation flattened a bunker, sending enormous plumes of black smoke spiraling into the clear blue sky. Concrete walls crumbled into dust, and massive steel vats folded like cheap tin cans. Within the span of 10 minutes, the cartel's flagship production operation was reduced to a heap of smoldering rubble. From the air, the Reaper drone meticulously recorded the systematic destruction. 8 bunkers gone, laboratories turned into scorched earth. What had once been a sophisticated facility manufacturing narcotics for millions of addicts across the globe now smoldered as nothing more than ash and ruin. The human toll was just as striking. U.S. medical teams reported that all 10 American soldiers wounded in the engagement were stabilized and safely evacuated. In stark contrast, the cartel had lost over 30 fighters in the Valley firefight, with dozens more captured alive. The sheer imbalance in casualties highlighted the surgical precision of the operation. Overwhelming firepower applied with disciplined restraint. By 2 p.m., the operation was officially complete. The captured convoy trucks were impounded, the massive cash shipments were loaded into armored containers, and all collected evidence was cataloged for future prosecutions. Helicopters lifted the detainees toward secure facilities, while demolition crews conducted a final sweep of the area, ensuring that no part of the laboratory could ever be resurrected. The impact of this single operation stretched far beyond the borders of Venezuela. Intelligence officials briefed that this strike had decisively cut off a supply chain responsible for poisoning communities with over 50 million potential doses across the United States. The ripple effect would disrupt distribution networks from Miami to Los Angeles, sending profound shockwaves through the cartel's entire logistical infrastructure. As the last plume of smoke drifted away into the sky, the message was unmistakable. No fortress, no convoy, no empire is beyond reach. On that September afternoon, the Sierra Verde Cartel lost its mountain, and with it, the illusion of its own invincibility. Subscribe to the channel and hit like and share for more upcoming videos.